Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin. I was invited to a Halloween party with my friends. It was just beginning, and I was already really drunk. Probably had about 12 beers. It should have been around 23 o'clock. Some friends of mine showed up and lended me the Zaza and said, "Let's go for a little walk." They used my drunk-ass performance as an excuse to smoke. I went with them. Everything was okay, they said. They had a spot where nobody could find us smoking, so I trusted them. We went into this little forest where we started to do the illegal thing. Just as we were about to leave, some random dude showed up behind us with a flashlight. We didn't think nothing about it because we were 5 guys. While we walked out of the forest with the random NPC with the flashlight, looked us all in the eyes, and probably knew that we were hella stoned. Above all, my drunk ass. He left as we got back into town and to our friend's place where the party was at. Just after we went to the party, I always felt like I was being watched. I was around my friends and didn't think much of it. The time came when I needed to head back home. As of right this moment, I forgot that I had to drive with my bicycle. The time I got to drive, my friends were a bit worried. I assured them I would be able to drive even if I fell down about 3 times before even getting on my bicycle. Driving home was fairly easy and relaxing, until I got to the point where I was in a big mountain. It was about 2 kilometers in length to get up there, and about 200 meters of altimeter. I felt a chill down my spine, because now I really noticed the feeling of being watched again very strong. You gotta understand this wasn't a normal mountain, or maybe more of a hill. This was an isolated forest, like bicycle climb. No person around me, no Wi-Fi. Not even some kind of reception where I could have called anybody. But the drive up there was like any other drive. I knew the animals in the forest made sounds, and what sounds they would make. Since I was a kid, I knew every sound they made. But about 500 meters into the drive, there was an animal sound. But about one tone of it. It was a bit too high. The sound occurred every 25 seconds. When I drive up a hill, it is easier for me to count the kicks I get into my bike, which are roughly a second apart. So every 25 kicks I would hear a sound, which was coming nearer and nearer every time. Just about that time my adrenaline kicked in, and I wasn't that drunk anymore. I was listening to everything I could hear because looking around wouldn't work because of my bike light. Just to listen to that interesting sound I was driving at around walking speed. I listened to the sound of the forest until I realized that that animal sound was not an animal. Suddenly it was right to my left where the forest was. I couldn't see anything. So at the moment I heard that sound, I took the F off. I had around 1 to 2 kilometers in front of me and drove my bike as fast as I could up this hill. Of course, I also had my rear light on. As I sprinted up this hill on my bike, I looked a bit down, and in the process, I could spot some human-like figure behind me in the red bike light. As I was up this hill, it wasn't far to my village, maybe 500 meters. I was also very fast at home, and instantly locked all doors. I got myself something to drink and a snack to get up to storage to my room. I had to pass the front door, which had a big window on the upper half of the door. Just as I passed the door, something behind the door I didn't really see. I only noticed it looked like a man's head without hair, moved away from the door. I didn't move because I knew I was home and could defend myself with the help of my family, that were asleep but maybe 15 meters in my reach. So I stood there and looked out that window, laid everything down except the glass water bottle, and watched the entrance of my yard. These 30 seconds felt like hours, but I noticed a human, in not much clothing, run out of my yard smiling directly at me while running in a different direction. I was terrified. I ran upstairs to my room, staring, watching TikTok, and tried to sleep. I slept better than I thought it would be. As I sat down at breakfast with some hell of a hangover, I watched the news. They said a bald murderer escaped the prison from the town I drove home with my bike. Since then, I never set foot near that forest when I am not in company with someone alone. Do you think it could have been the escaped prisoner following me? I can't remember the exact year that this was, but I want to say I was at least 5 or 6, and my aunt picked me and my sisters up because my mom had to work late. It was near Halloween, not exactly Halloween Day though. We get to the house and we're going to call my cousin Caleb. Caleb's mom gets out his costume and he puts it on. At the time, I didn't know what the movie Scream was because I was too young to watch scary movies. But Caleb puts on his costume, and it looked pretty cool to me. But remember, I'm like 6, so obviously it was a little weird, or maybe even creepy to me. My mom leaves and my aunt goes to sleep, so there's no adults watching us at all. Later on, through the night, I'm with my sister in the bedroom watching TV. Nothing out of the ordinary, and suddenly the TV cuts off. Things like this would happen often at Caleb's house, but we tried to plug it in. It wasn't working, so me and my sister leave the room to try and get someone to turn it back on. But as we opened the door, we noticed it was almost pitch black, and we couldn't see anything but the moon's light shining out of the windows in the home. So obviously we're scared, like, come on, it's pitch black in the middle of the night with no adult up to even do anything. Caleb was a bit older, kinda near my older sister's age, so they kinda always teamed up, I guess. And me and my sister had no idea where she was even at, but that was the last thing we were worried about. We go back in the bedroom, and moments later, Caleb busts through the door telling us we needed to hide with my older sister. We'll call her Jasmine. Jasmine adding on that we needed to hide while they seek. Me thinking this was a normal game of hide and seek, I agreed to play. When they left the other room, I was looking from the living room to the kitchen, and I see my cousin pull out 2 long and sharp knives as he continues to count out the timer, and I start freaking out because I'm trying not to die. I go back into the bedroom and tell my sister about what's going on, and we go looking, and there's literally nowhere to hide, so in my little brain I decided to go under the covers to hide. Me and my sister are just sitting there waiting for things to go down. We hear him slowly open the door and walk towards the bed, and I really thought he had at least some sympathy for the fact that I was 6 and my sister was 7, and Caleb was like 10, but I was wrong. He had none. I could kind of feel his presence, and he just waits there for a few seconds before he starts stabbing through the covers repeatedly. Me and my sister are screaming so loud it woke up his mom, which is why I'm lucky I didn't die no matter how much I didn't like her. I went to their house a few more times after that situation, but still, I haven't seen them in years. In mid-2020, I was 19 female and moving around a lot due to homelessness with my mom. We ended up moving into a man's house. We met him through my uncle's friend. His son, 24, and his son's friend, 25, also lived there. Some backstory. His son's friend, we'll call him D, was sort of gang affiliated. I say sort of because he wasn't hugely involved in it to my knowledge. The son, we'll call him B, wasn't. D carried a gun in his pocket at all times, and I was aware of it. It didn't bother me though, because we had formed a friendship and I trusted him. Anyway, Halloween 2020. The guy that owned the house, B's dad, wasn't there for the week. I knew he wouldn't care if we had a little party, so we did. I had one of my friends over, we'll call her S, and besides us, it was my mom, B, and D. So yeah, it was really small, but we were drinking, so it was a good time. We were all in the living room. I was sitting on the middle of the couch. S was on my right and my mom was on my left. B was in the chair next to the front door on the left, and D was on the chair to the left where the living room opens up to the rest of the house. We were laughing and drinking. All of a sudden, a tall guy wearing a black mask comes into the room from the dark hallway and tackles Dee out of the chair and onto the floor. I had never seen him before, nor did I recognize his voice. He threatens Dee to give him his gun, while he has him pinned to the floor. Meanwhile, mind you, I was drunk. I was barely taking this seriously at this point because I thought there was no way. This was a scene from a movie. So I was still sort of laughing and smiling. The masked guy grabs Dee's gun and walks over to us sitting on the couch, waving it in our faces and asking me what's funny. I still couldn't quite process what was happening. He tells me to get up, so at this point I was nervous. I did. And then it hits me that Dee knows gangs, so it could really be serious. He walks me past B over to the front door. Whole time he has the gun pointed at my head. Everyone in the room is staring at me. I didn't understand why he was targeting me specifically, because I wasn't Dee's girlfriend or anything. But then, I started getting more afraid when I realized I was the only conventionally attractive woman, and I was wearing a low-cut dress, while the other two women in the room weren't. So, you know where my thoughts were heading. He's about to walk me out of the house, and B screams to Dee with a very serious demeanor. "Dee, what did you do?" The masked guy walks me out of the house and slowly to his truck. My heart is racing thinking about what's going to happen to me and if I was ever going to make it out of it. Time was moving so slowly. Then, boom. Everyone comes out of the house laughing hysterically, except for my friend S, who was oblivious. The guy pulls down his mask. I realized it was a friend of theirs. My hands instantly cupped my mouth, and I quickly walked back into the house and locked myself into the room for probably 20 minutes. I didn't want to be a party pooper, so for the remainder of the night I went with it. Turns out, the masked guy was really nice, and he wasn't a threat. But ever since that night, I'm petrified of guns. I hate being around guns, even if I know that they aren't loaded. I have nightmares of getting shot in mass shootings a few times a week. I can't even play Battlefield anymore, which used to be my favorite video game. I can't go to the theaters to see a movie without gripping my boyfriend in terror whenever a man walks back to their seat in the dark. I can't go to big food courts without casually looking around, thinking of how I would get away if a shooting happened. It doesn't help that last year there was a shooting 40 minutes from where I live. I feel like a pussy because nothing actually happened to me. Sophomore year of college. Ah, the memories. October hits, time to get my spooky on and have some fun at parties and dress up. Halloween is my favorite holiday. About a week before Halloween, one night I said fuck it. I was bored. My Tinder date canceled due to studying for an exam. I was in a pissed off mood and I didn't really want to hang out with friends in their dorm and get drunk. So I decided to play a little basketball at this park no one goes to. Basketball really relaxes me, and shooting around for about an hour was going to relax me. Then I figured I'd go back to my place and play video games. I pull up to this park, and as anticipated, not a single car in sight. A trail is nearby that leads to a mountain. That's where all the stoners probably hang, I was thinking, lol. Great time to shoot around and relax. I'm contemplating putting on headphones, but then I realized, as night's approaching, it's best I hear around me. Sunset hits, and it's a beautiful pink sky from above. Picture perfect. Another 15 minutes pass by and it's dark outside. I'll be wrapping up this shoot around soon, until a loud piercing scream I hear, probably coming from the trail, preceded with weird laughs. I'm like, okay, I'm spooked, but don't see a damn thing, so fuck it, 10 minutes, I'm out of here. Notice a car pulls up in the parking lot, and the car proceeds to park. I go to the bathroom near the court, and I'm like, I'm gonna take a piss and get out. As I'm taking a piss, I'm not lying, I hear a whisper in the bathroom stall. I swallow, and I'm like, fucking shit. Could be a tweaker, a homeless person, or a troubled individual. Clowns is what I think was whispering over and over. I get the fuck out, and know someone damn well is near me and with me.
And fucking hell, it's no one I know. Car door slams. I'm like, let me try to get eyes on where whoever just got out of the car. I creep behind the small building where the bathrooms are and peek. I gasp and was in shock. 2 clowns walking slowly to the courts, then to the nearby trail. I'm literally thinking, fuck, maybe I should just follow these 2 clowns and see where they were heading so late. I figured that probably wouldn't be the brightest idea, and put my backpack on and get ready for the walk to my car. I'm walking to my car and hop in, go on my phone and make a call, telling my buddies I'll be online in about an hour. I noticed someone just sitting on the bench near the court. I'm thinking it had to be the guy in the bathroom. I'm like, I've had enough. Drive off and get back to my place and relax. Could have been worse if I followed those 2 clowns walking near the trail. The clown sightings were definitely creepy in 2016. Really was a weird time in many parts of the country. Hell, I was reading in other parts of the world. Just a creepy encounter I wanted to share. Who knows? Maybe these clowns will come back. So today has been a particularly slow day at work, and I've been killing time reading these stories. Maybe enough time has passed and I can share mine. I had this friend who was really into the occult. Unfortunately, I was the one who got him turned on to it. We had a mutual appreciation for the paranormal and all things weird, so I thought the subject would interest him. He started going deeper into the subject to the point where he wouldn't talk about anything else. He would actually interrupt a conversation and force the subject back to occult matters. Rude, but sometimes people go through phases where their interest is all they want to talk about. It was a mostly forgivable offense. I think I should mention that this particular friend didn't have a very large friend circle. His depression and introverted nature kept him inside a lot. He didn't have the best luck in relationships with women. His world was kind of small, and I did enjoy hanging out with him, so I did my best to be a good friend. I didn't want to just brush him off just because he was acting a little weirder than normal. Honestly, for the longest time he was totally normal. We'd chat and play games together on the PlayStation. Sometimes we'd go see movies. We all hung out at the park. We went swimming. Overall, we had a good time hanging out. Things started to go downhill when he started to smoke DMT. Personally, I think psychedelics are amazing tools that can offer insight into your life, but they should be treated with respect. My friend got to a point where he was making it himself. Apparently, it's a pretty easy thing to do after a meager amount of research. And he was smoking it daily, multiple times a day. For those of you who aren't familiar with the substance, when you smoke it, you get transported to a different world, an entirely new plane of existence. Your body and yourself don't exist anymore. You're just exploring this alternate reality dreamscape. My personal experience with it led me to seeing a dragon once, in its kaleidoscope of a cornucopia. People see all kinds of different things there. Imagine what it does to a person when they're smoking it 30 plus times a day. He started telling me things like he was the reincarnated Osiris. He said he was seeing Egyptian hieroglyphs all over the place in waking life. Apparently, he had an hour-long conversations with entities in his bedroom, even when he wasn't smoking DMT. Of course, I was very alarmed to hear all of this, and I told him he needed to take a serious break. No drugs at all for a few months, so he can find solid footing in reality again. At this point, I was still hanging out with him because he obviously needed some help, and like I said before, he didn't have a lot of friends that could give him that. He was also the black sheep of the family, so I knew he wasn't getting any kind of support from them. He was really close to his sister, and I did reach out to her on Facebook to express my concerns. I pushed her to talk to him into getting some psychiatric help, because he was slipping past the point of no return. I'm not really sure if she took my messages seriously, since we didn't really know each other. Plus, she is at least 6 years younger than us, and possibly didn't grasp how serious the situation was becoming. In any case, I'll jump forward now to the part where things start to get really creepy. My boyfriend had made arrangements to hang out with our friend at the park. I didn't really want to go because I felt like I needed a break from him and his nonsensical ranting. I just couldn't deal with it on that particular day. My boyfriend said he wasn't all that bad, and we went anyway. We get to the park, and he is his usual self, ranting about Egypt and made up gods that only he knew the truth about, etc. He also had this large hunting knife that he kept fiddling with the whole time we were on a walk. He told us that he had been using it in his ceremonial magic, and that it helped to banish negative thoughts. It made me extremely uneasy. He would do this thing where he would take the knife and make stabbing motions near his heart or head, like he was mock stabbing himself, all while holding a conversation with me or my boyfriend. I think we were both really on edge and didn't know what to say or to do about it. I tried to distract him from doing it by bringing up other subjects that might interest him, but he kept on with this ritual. Keep in mind, we were walking on a trail, so it wasn't like we could just say goodbye and then and there. We had to walk back to our car and drop him off at his car. My boyfriend had the bright idea that we should get some lunch after our walk, even though I was doing my best to give him a look that said, "No, you crazy fuck, why do you think I want to spend any more time with this nut?" But it must not have been very effective, or my boyfriend was ignoring it. Not sure. Either way, we ended up getting in the car to go get lunch. In the car I was driving, my boyfriend was in the passenger seat, and our weirdo friend was in the back. As we're heading through the busy part of town, where all the shopping and restaurants are, I hear the distinctive sound of a belt buckle coming undone. Then I hear the worst sound imaginable. I peek back out of the corner of my eye, and my suspicions were confirmed. This crazy fucker was full on jacking off in our back seat. I mean, pants all the way down, bare ass on the seat, beating it so hard it was like he wanted to rip it off. Instantly, I felt sick to my stomach, and all nervous energy I had throughout the day popped up into my head. I was trying not to shake and trying to ignore it and drive through heavy traffic. I kind of had a freeze response, I guess. The whole time I kept thinking about that huge ass knife he had in his pocket, and obviously he was completely off his rocker now. I was afraid to say anything or confront him because I didn't know how he was going to react. This part is nuts, but my boyfriend didn't fucking seem to notice, and the whole time he kept rambling on about God knows what. I couldn't listen because my thoughts were 100% focused on driving and trying to act like I didn't know what was going on in my back seat. We get to the restaurant, and my boyfriend runs inside to grab food. I'm left alone in the car with our friend, and I try to act like I'm browsing on my phone, when really I'm watching and listening as hard as I can. We don't talk. My boyfriend gets back in, and I complain that I'm tired. It's been a long day. Let's drop him off, etc. So I drive us back to our friend's car, and he doesn't get out of our vehicle. He just sits there. I have to get a little bit rude and ask him to please get out and go home. He gets out of our car and walks over to his passenger side. I start getting really scared and suspected the worst. He pulled out a gun out of some kind of bag that he had on his seat, and he just walks over to our car with it. I don't know why the fuck I did this, but I was so pissed I just got out of my car and walked right up to him. I was maybe 3 feet away and could see it was loaded, 9mm. I kept asking him over and over, "What are you doing?" Because apparently that's all my brain could think to do. I told him to get in his car and go home. He never said anything during this whole time. He just kind of cried and had this wild look in his eye. For whatever reason, he got back into his car and drove off. I told my boyfriend obviously we are never hanging out with him again, and that I didn't even want him to talk to him anymore. No contact. Nada. A few months passes, and he occasionally messages me through the PlayStation or texts my phone. He says a lot of random stuff, and I just ignore it. It turns out he moved down to Tennessee near Nashville. I don't know why. He had a roommate, and I think their girlfriend lived there. I'm not really sure about the situation. I think maybe he's turning his life around and getting a fresh start down there. I think it's best to cut all contact and let him regroup. I'm not interested in any kind of friendship with him, and I know he needed help beyond what I could offer. Again, I reached out to his sister and let her know he had a gun. She managed to get it from him somehow, but it did little good in the end. I get a call around 11 p.m. one night that wakes me up. It's a man claiming he's a detective down in Gatlin, Tennessee, and my heart skips a beat. I start sweating and immediately ask what happened. Apparently, my former friend stabbed someone to death on Halloween Day. I don't know all the details, and the articles about it are kind of sparse. The whole thing is really surreal, and I'm just left feeling like I'm lucky that I didn't get shot last summer. This whole thing turned out way longer than I meant it to be. But that's the story. I'm still feeling creeped out by the whole ordeal, and I'm kind of feeling sick after writing all of this. Warning, upsetting content. Where to start with this story? So I work as a veterinary nurse assistant. We get unusual things brought into our clinic, but this one, I just had to share. Today, 31st October 2020, was my Saturday to work. I was on reception with the other receptionist and vet nurse. Early, 9 a.m., we get a call from an elderly man who found a dead cat in his front garden at the time. He said, "It looks like its head's been caved in." We often get deceased animals brought in as a result of being hit by a car, so we asked him to bring it to us. Before 10 a.m.-ish, the elderly man comes in with the black cat in a plastic bag. We take contact details from the man, and he tells us how he found it, and my wife is so upset, poor thing. Here's where things get creepy. The cat is in a clear plastic bag. Guys, it has no head. Decapitated. On further inspection, where the cat's head should have been were clean cuts. Now, a bit of background. I live in the UK, and a while back we had a string of mutilated animals being found outside homes, / in parks, etc. at that point. The supposed suspect was called the Cordon Cat Killer / M25 Cat Killer. However, police ruled it out to be foxes, supposedly. I have seen plenty of animals that have been attacked by other animals, dogs, cats, foxes, etc., and I could say with absolute confidence that I believe this was no animal. The whole body, aside from its missing head, was intact. No bites, puncture wounds, broken bones, claw marks. Nothing to suggest the cat had been killed by an animal. The place where the head should have been was a clean cut, as if by a knife. We scanned the poor cat for a microchip. Found one. We looked up the details on the microchip system and found the cat's name, Lucifer, a black cat named Lucifer, found beheaded on Halloween. I wish this wasn't true, that I had made it up, but sadly it's not. We tried contacting his owner. Home phone wasn't connecting, and we left a message on the mobile number that we found Lucifer and to call ASAP. One other disturbing thing was the address where Lucifer was found was 2 streets over from his registered address and close to my vet clinic. I was very wary when I finished my shift today and waited inside the clinic until my husband was outside to pick me up. I just have the unnerving feeling that whoever did this was lurking around, still out there. We alerted the police, RSPCA, and a group called Snarl, South Norwood Animal Rescue, and Liberty. Snarl are eager to help, however they cannot examine the body without the owner's consent. So at present, we are holding Lucifer until we can make contact with his owners to decide what to do. The lovely poor old man has agreed to be contacted by the police, RSPCA, Snarl, to help in any way. I've worked alongside animal cruelty and abuse cases, but this has to be the most chilling, disturbing, and upsetting case I've ever encountered in my years working as a veterinary nurse assistant. I'm hoping we get good news about this story, and that is my creepy encounter. I pray I never have another case as one of these. Safe to say I hugged my 2 cats extra tight when I got home. This happened almost a decade ago, when I was 13 years old. I remember my friend and I were excited about our first time trick-or-treating without our parents. We lived in a small town where nothing ever happens, and we thought it would be the same that night. It started like any other Halloween night. We collected candy, ran into many of our classmates, and had a lot of fun. At 8 p.m., we realized we had to head home, but on the way back, we dropped by our teacher's house. She wasn't home, and the street didn't have many street lights. To add to this, most of the houses had their lights turned off, and their Halloween decorations were taken down. My friend and I were slightly spooked and disappointed by the lack of candy. We wanted to get out of the street as soon as possible. That's when a man emerged from under one of the few streetlights. It was a police officer. Neither of us seemed to notice him before this, possibly due to the darkness. He startled us, but seemed very friendly. The cop introduced himself and pointed to an inconspicuous bungalow. He said an older man living in the house was inviting trick-or-treaters inside. Someone called the police, but when he arrived, no one was answering the door. He kept telling us his police car and partner were just around the block. We looked around but couldn't see them. I was a pretty paranoid kid. Growing up, my mom loved watching crime shows, and she'd always tell me tidbits of lessons. One of these was a story about fake cops. Although I don't remember the details, I remembered people can pretend to be police officers to gain trust. Throughout this whole exchange, I was terrified. His lack of badge, police car, and partner did not feel right. I was also conflicted because he was smiling and seemed like he just wanted to help. That was until we heard his strange request. He said he needed to speak to this potential predator and needed our help. Since we were young girls, the man would answer if we knocked. The officer claimed he would hide behind the bushes next to the front door. He would wait for him to invite us in, jump out, and catch him red-handed. At that moment, I knew my friend felt the same way I did. We both fell silent, but one of us managed to ask if we could discuss. The cop said yes, but told us we had limited time. The street was silent, and he could hear everything. I remember the feeling of wanting to say something, but fearing he would hear us and escalate the situation. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever. The cop was getting increasingly impatient and told us we had to decide quickly. Around that moment, a family came down the street and noted the officer. They were coming over to see what was happening. That's when the cop said he'd be right back and not to go anywhere. My friend and I scrambled to collect our thoughts and decided to run away. We sprinted out of the street and didn't look back. On our way home, we discussed theories that ranged from him being a fake cop, him playing a prank on us, or him being a real cop, but we misunderstood the situation. When we told our parents, we downplayed it a lot and doubted our experience. In the end, we didn't call the police, but our dads drove to the house and area of the house. No cop cars or police officers in sight. Over the years, I can say I regret not calling the police. At the time, my friend and I were convinced we misunderstood what happened. We even told our class the next day, and most, including our teacher, thought it was not alarming. Looking back, I find it extremely strange a police officer would put two children in such a potentially dangerous situation, moreover with our parents not present. I wonder what his motives were, but it will, unfortunately, remain unsolved. At the time this took place, I was 16 years old. I'm 25 now, so I'll do my best to get the whole story down for you guys. It was Halloween in a small South Louisiana town. It was a crisp night. The temperature was in the mid-80s, and the heat showed no signs of slacking off. I was walking around with my older sister and our friend Brooke. My sister had gone as a cat, and Brooke had gone as a witch. I had made the awful decision of wearing a formal gown, since I decided to go as a zombie prom queen. I had a crown and everything. I was drowning in that hot dress, though. It was so hot, and the corset back was restricting my breathing. It was about 8:40, and all the kids were pretty much cleared out of the street. We were making our way back to the park next to City Hall, where my mother was supposed to pick us up. We were supposed to be there for 9 o'clock. The three of us were about 6 blocks away at this point, and my sister had stopped to talk to a friend of hers. I was not stopping though. It was close to time for my mom to pick us up, and I was not going to be late. Also, I was miserable in that stupid dress, and I wanted to go home. I had carried on for about 2 blocks down before I noticed that my sister and my friend had both stayed behind. I was annoyed to say the least. I only had 4 blocks to go before I could lay down in my mother's minivan. Being alone in the dark was starting to give me the creeps. The yellow streetlights didn't do the ambience any favors. I'd kept my pace and kept walking until I heard the rumble of a muffler coming up behind me. I moved all the way off the road. The large black truck came past very quickly and turned to the left in front of me. I passed the intersection, and I only had 3 blocks left. Then I heard the truck again. I'd never moved back onto the road, so I didn't bother looking back. It wasn't too strange that the same truck had passed again. The 3rd time they passed, they slowed down for a good 30 seconds or so. That is what scared me. I didn't recognize the truck, and the windows were heavily tinted. As soon as I thought I could see a bit of a face, they peeled out and disappeared around a corner. I made another block before I heard the truck again. I was 2 blocks away from my ride, and I was scared to start running. I already couldn't breathe because of the dress, and I was terrified I would pass out. As soon as I heard the truck, my stomach wrenched. I still kept walking, a little bit faster than I already had been. I kept my eyes down and watched my own shadow as the headlights came closer. I heard the brakes, and I had made the decision to run, but I was too late. I realized how close they were to me. I felt a sharp pain on the back of my head, and I looked up the best I could to see an arm sticking out of a window. An eagle clutching a sword was tattooed on his upper forearm. He had my hair wrapped around his fist. Before I could really comprehend the situation, he pumped the gas and was dragging me alongside of his truck. I was running as best as I could, clawing his arm. I was crying and screaming. The only thing that kept running through my mind was that if I tripped, I was going to be run over. This man was just laughing. I was completely helpless. As soon as it started, he let me go. I fell to my knees on the asphalt. I tore my dress, skinned my palms, and my scalp was on fire. I was inconsolable, and I was hyperventilating. I stood up and wiped my face. Then I looked around, and felt absolutely violated. I looked back at the way I'd come from and realized that this man had dragged me by my hair for a whole block and a half. Once I caught my head, I ran across the street to the park. My mother was nowhere to be seen. I climbed into the enclosed slide, and I just curled up and cried. I don't know how long I was laying there before I heard my mother calling my name. I came out, and she was walking up the street calling for me. I walked over to her, and she looked me up and down and started freaking out. Apparently, I had blood on my face and dress from my hands. She ran to me and was asking me what happened, and kept looking me up and down for a gash or something worse. I couldn't find my voice. I just held on to her and cried. We spent the next few hours at the police station filing out a report. Long story short, nothing ever came of it. My sister got into trouble with my parents for not being at the city hall on time. She was grounded. My mother had actually left City Hall to go and look for us. She found my sister where I left her, and my sister hadn't even realized that I hadn't stayed. I got in trouble for not staying with my sister, but I didn't get grounded. I'm still pretty mad that the dress was ruined, and I lost the damn crown. I'm even angrier that the man was never caught. This Halloween, I will be out with my godchild trick-or-treating. It'll be the first one that I've gone out for in 9 years, since this happened. This is my first post on Reddit, so sorry if anything is wrong with the formatting. Sorry if this is a tad long. I want to try to explain all the details. Also, side note that I will be referring to people as what character they were dressed as instead of their real names to preserve anonymity. This happened last night and it was pretty terrifying. I decided to go trick-or-treating with my sister and her friends. Most of us went as characters from the video game Undertale. I went as Alphys, and my sister and her friend went as Papyrus and Sans, respectively. The only ones who didn't go as Undertale characters were Deadpool and a zombie. We're all girls except for Deadpool. I was the oldest there, and I'm a junior in high school. We just had a good time just dicking around our subdivision and getting candy for a while. After 40 minutes, we passed a house that changed our night for the worse. We got candy from a sweet old couple that lived there. They weren't the trouble. There was a van in the driveway. It was a stereotypical white creeper van with tinted windows. San said that she saw two middle-aged men in the van, but I only saw the one in the driver's seat. We didn't think that they were any trouble because we just assumed that they were sons of the old couple. Undyne even dared Zombie to slam her face against the window and scream. Thankfully, she didn't go for it. Who knows what would have happened then? Let me just say that my subdivision is very safe. Many families with young children live here because of this. So even though I read stories like this on here and L&M, I never thought that something like this would happen in my neighborhood, and especially not to me. But life has a funny way of proving my positive assumptions wrong. We moved on to the next few houses, and Deadpool noticed that the creepy van was following us. When we moved, it moved. It always stayed at least 2 houses behind us at all times. We quickly got creeped out. Undyne said that she was going to make a run for it. Sans quickly suggested that we go to her house, which was close by. So we all started running. I was wearing my mom's scrubs from work as part of my costume, and since she's larger than I am, they were falling down. I was terrified that I would trip on them and fall. All the while, the car kept following us. We sprinted as fast as we could into Sans' driveway, and she closed the garage door behind us and locked all the doors in the house. Everyone hit the floor in her living room, which was in the back of the house. Sans started to try calming us down, and we went into the kitchen to get us all some water. Suddenly, she came sprinting back into the room, telling us all to lay on the floor and to turn all the lights off because he's coming. We all understood immediately, but Undyne ran into the front room to look through the window, outside, despite the rest of us screaming for her not to. She came rushing back, screaming that the van was sitting in front of the house, in the middle of the street like it was waiting for something. Probably us. Then we saw the headlights from the front of the house. The van was shining its headlights through the front window. Next, we heard knocking. At this point, Undyne was laughing softly out of fear. Zombie was trying to keep quiet while having a panic attack. Deadpool was trying to keep Undyne quiet. My sister was texting our mom. Sans was texting her mom. And I was paralyzed with fear. The knocking stopped and we heard the van drive away. We all started to stand up. Then lights shone from the back window. There's a road that goes by Sans' backyard. The van was there, shining its lights into the window just above where we were laying on our backs. The knocking started up again. We all thought we were going to die. We waited for what felt like hours, but was only likely to be 5 to 10 minutes at most. Then Sans' neighbor saved us by coming over to check on us. Sans' mom called him to alert him of our situation. The van promptly sped away. We all got some water and waited for a while to make sure the van was gone. I wanted to call the police, but we didn't do it because of the guys in the van didn't actually try to harm us, and we didn't even have a license plate number for the van. We walked everybody home without incident, except when we occasionally thought we saw the creeper van. I even started trick-or-treating again, which I know was stupid. But I wasn't going to pass up free candy. My sister and I got home to a lecture from our mother about how we should have called her to deal with rides home. I honestly had thought of that before, but my stupid panic brain thought that they might try to take my mom. I often have thoughts like this because after my dad died 7 years ago, I don't want to lose anyone else that I care about. Today, I learned that we weren't the only kids this happened to. Some of Sans' other friends in other subdivisions had an experience almost identical to ours last night. And when I brought this up, one of my teachers at school, she said that some kids in yet another subdivision in my town reported a similar white van following them home from school. I honestly hope that these 3 events aren't related, and last night was just 2 guys looking to scare some kids on Halloween, for the fun of the holiday. But when I really take in all that's happened, it doesn't seem that way. I'm honestly afraid that these 2 men were trying to kidnap, rape, and or murder a bunch of teenage girls last night. They may have not seen Deadpool, not known he was a boy, or thought they could take him since he's a skinny, short kid. The scariest part is not what happened to us, but that these creeps might still be out there with malicious intentions. And there may be some other kids that aren't so lucky. So I guess that Sans said it best. We really did have a bad time last night. If you have any stories that you would like to see narrated here on the channel, please go into the subreddit and submit them there. The link is in the description. Also, we do have a Discord now. Thank you so much to Creepy Clown Girl for putting it together for us. You can come hang out with me and other narrators and get the party started, get spooky with us. That link is also in the description as well. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to introduce the King of Panic. We have a lot of brand new content coming soon with him in it. He is very talented. He does not have his own channel. He just kind of wants to be a part of this. So if you would like to hear from him once you start and you like his voice, stay tuned here. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.